Thank you for staying with us. Nigeria's power sector has struggled for the longest with poor performance, and since the early 80s, boasting of steady and constant electricity in the country has only been wishful thinking, and this isn't because people who have managed the sector have been incompetent, but because so many challenges that continue to worsen over the years have plagued the sector, from corruption to issues with debt, gas supply for generation, as well as grid collapse and many other factors are only few of the problems prevalent in the sector. And recently, Nigerians have been wailing over the deteriorating state of the power sector, which has repeatedly forced them to stay in darkness with no electricity, and the cost of petrol to run generating sets are beyond their reach. This year, power generation dropped substantially due to various reasons, with unavailability of natural gas being primarily responsible for the inadequate electricity supply in the country. Bearing all of this in mind, President Bola Tinubu recently signed the Executive Order 40 to introduce fiscal incentives for oil and gas projects. And this is also in a bid to reduce contracting costs and timelines, amongst others, in the hope that it will tackle the challenges in the sector. Joining us now via Zoom from Houston, the United States, is the chair and partner of the Energy Practice Group at Bloomfield Law Practice, Dr. Ayodele Oni. It's good to see you again. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. So let's...
Thank you very much for having me.
Right. Let's begin with what's your assessment really about this order, Executive Order 40, issued by the President? Could this work?
Okay, yeah, I mean, it should work. It should play its role. It's not the silver bullet, but it does make a lot of sense. The idea is to introduce incentives, particularly around non-associated gas greenfield projects. The idea is that you want to ensure that we're as competitive as other countries in the world who have gas in large quantity. Recall that we're a gas province with some oil. But historically, we've abandoned gas. If you look at the Petroleum Act, before we had the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021, no one cared about gas for a long time. It was oil, you know. So that's what it is. So there were enough incentives to encourage people to do those projects. And we have as much non-associated gas as we do have associated gas. So these incentives are just to encourage people, knowing that there are tax credits and tax allowances, gas tax credits and gas tax allowances to do those projects that will ensure that we have more gas to be able to generate power, because 80% or more of power generated supplied via the grid is gas fired. We have quite a bit of hydro too, but it's mostly gas fired.
Okay, seeing the fact that we are a gas nation, I'd like to take you on the fact that there's a proposed increment in the price of gas, which will affect every other thing, especially electricity. What's your take on that?
Okay, it's a two-edged sword for me. Gas before now was $2.18. It's going to be $2.42 per MMBTU. The idea is also to encourage people and encourage gas producers, because many of them have said that the gas pricing isn't commercially reasonable. And it's historical, like I said, when we had NEPA barely paid for gas, paid less than the cost of production. So no one invested in gas apart from export projects. Now, with increasing the price of gas, it then means more people want to invest. But it then means that electricity tariffs will go up, because gas is a pass-through. It's like if you want to produce something and one of the constituents is 2 naira, that thing cannot then be 2 naira. It means it will be 2 naira plus X, because gas is one of the things you need to generate electricity. If the price of gas goes up, it then means tariffs will go up. Then it then suggests that subsidy that the government is being paying, unless the government stops, will also go up. And I understand that from a policy point of view, there may be debates around whether government wants to keep the subsidy. Well, with the Electricity Act, many states will begin to take over or are now allowed to and encouraged to take over the electricity markets in their own boundaries, in their own territories. So that may now be the challenge for state governments over time. So it's two-edged. It can increase subsidy, but can also make it more attractive, together with the presidential order for more gas producers to invest in gas production, to invest in gas infrastructure.
So what about what happens to the common man who depend on gas?
Okay. Now, interesting point. Generally speaking, almost every country in the world does give subsidy. Is subsidy for what is then the question? That said, that increase from $2.18 to $2.42, in my view, is ridiculous. So I do not think that it means that the common man will suffer more substantially. The thing is that the gas the common man does need, I mean, what you need is power. And you already spend quadruple of what you will pay for grid electricity on self-generation. So the truth is that if you want to be honest, if you're spending so much already on self-generation, grid power is always the cheapest source of power. So if you have more power, it should drive down the price over time. Now, everyone's been complaining about power supply. One of the key challenges has been gas, unavailability of gas. Historically, the generation companies before privatization owed gas producers. Imagine that I sell products or goods to you at credit, and over a period of time you stop paying me, or you pay me only a fraction. At some point I'm going to have to stop and tell you have to pay me what you owe me, because remember that I too have operating costs, OPEX, and I have CAPEX. You understand, to be able to deliver that product. So it's better for gas prices to go up slightly and we have gas available for power generation than for us to continue to complain and for you and I to continue to use our generators, which is 3 or 4 times more expensive than grid power. So ultimately, I think it will benefit the masses, as you've stated, the common man. That's what it is. So it's better to have grid power and a bit more expensive gas than to rely on self-generation. I pass my neighbor, your own power generator. It's 3 or 4 times more expensive. If we're already spending that much, I'm sure if you go to your street, you'd see that the informal sector suffers. Someone starts a barber shop now or starts a hair salon. After 3 months, they pack up. Why? They're spending all of their costs to buy fuel for self-generation. So that's it. We'd rather have grid power because there's gas supply than rely on self-generation, which is way more expensive. If people think about it that way, then maybe it won't be such a big deal.
Right, and but as we talk about the practicability of this issue, the federal government is still saying that part of the agenda behind Executive Order 40 is to make gas affordable for all Nigerians, affordable and available. Are you saying that this may not be practicable? And in any case, well, the papers this morning, the federal government is said to be finalizing plans to remove electricity subsidy, and it's going on to execute or going on to plan a 200% tariff hike. When you look at all of these realities, are you also saying that it may not be practicable for gas to be affordable, or can we have a bit of everything?
Okay, we can have a bit of everything. Now, the question of affordability is, in my view, those views are exaggerated more often than not. Now, if you say something moves from $2.18 to $2.40, $2.42, I do not think that that's more than 10%, 20%. I'm not sure what the exact number is. it doesn't necessarily translate to a 200% increase in electricity tariffs. Recall that, of course, maybe when government then does remove subsidy on electricity. The thing is that increasing gas price doesn't then make it not affordable. Increasing it slightly doesn't then make it more affordable. Other factors may conspire to make it more expensive, that's electricity now, but I do not think, for example, I don't think your cooking gas has increased since tariffs were removed a few days ago. I don't think the prices have necessarily increased in a manner that you will notice it. So you can have a bit of everything when you compare to your own self-generation. There must be indices, there must be basis for comparison. We cannot compare in isolation. We need to think through the entire process. What do you ultimately want? You want end products that over time will be affordable. Now, what I say about energy is that the first thing you need is accessibility. Have access, then you begin to talk about price. You cannot speak about price when you do not even have access in the first place. If you don't have electricity, you can't even debate tariffs because you're spending so much on self-generation. You'll be doing over $200, 200 naira per kilowatt hour, probably 300 with prices at the pump now. And that was before removal, partial or complete removal of subsidy on fuel. You'd be doing about 200, 220. Now you probably be doing closer to 400 per kilowatt hour. So the truth is that you'd have to have an objective, you must have objective criteria for comparison. You cannot compare in isolation. Do you want to self-generate, or do you want to have grid power that is cheaper and can't get cheaper as there are more projects? You know, as there are more gas projects, because it's market forces of demand and supply, right? The more supply you have, the more likely prices go down. Yeah, there are situations where they're absolute, but generally speaking, if you have more products, you'd have more competition, people will give you more incentives, and prices will go down. But if you do not get to the point of having the market have maybe a glut or nearly a glut, then prices, that thing is not existent. You'd have to produce it yourself, and the cost of individuals producing is more expensive. So we need to have an objective criteria. So you can have a potpourri of everything. I do not think this necessarily then makes gas expensive. It's just not. It's just maybe now more commercially reasonable. That's the way I see it. That can be output. Actually.
You seem to be optimistic about the power generation of Nigerians, seeing that the price of gas has increased and investors will come in, and ultimately, rather than having self-power, you have the power going on in the national grid and ultimately affecting the people. But many people will not be optimistic like that, because word on the street believe that this is just a ploy to just increase price of gas, and like Kemi had mentioned, the subsidy on power, the minister had said it will be removed. That's why I asked the question, what is in it for the people? Because if the price of gas is on the high side, many are not optimistic that they will have constant power to power their household equipment and businesses.
Okay, so the thing is, the only gas is not the only challenge in the sector. I'm just saying that if we need to do a few things to get it right in the sector, gas being one of them, and being one of the key factors. If we resolve that and everything else also does work, with the new Electricity Act, and states can now legislate on electricity, create their own electricity market, regardless of the presence of the grid, then you may begin to find a solution. You have decentralization, and that's how federalism works, right? States that have the capacity can go it themselves. States that do not have the capacity can now get help from the federal government. So some states may continue to use the national grid, whilst others may self-generate. Now the thing is, whether you want to ultimately get to a point, and because energy has long lead times, when you have energy projects, you're not going to do an energy project or take a decision on energy today and you see the results today, because it will take you 4 years to build a project. An FPSO may take you 3 to 4 years, or a project relating to deep offshore, will take you a number of years. A power project, you do not just go to the market and get it over the counter. You'd have to build, you have to have pipelines, you have to negotiate contracts. So people will not see the results today. It's something you should see over time. But if you never do it, you never see the results. But if you do it today, you then may see the results. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet. I'm not saying it's the only problem, but I'm saying it may be part. It will be part of the solution to the power sector challenge as a whole. So we won't see the result necessarily today, and then we would rather have access, which is slightly more expensive now, and over time with competition, prices can go down when you have several options, is the point I am making.
Right, and the federal government is also not immune to the forex and revenue crisis, currently in the country, and he has also said, the federal government has said, it could get better, it will get better if we get it right with, the promises that this Executive Order 40 bring on board. What are your thoughts in this regard?
Okay, I think the idea is because there's pressure on the naira, right? So if we have more forex, if we generate more forex, then it should reduce the pressure. So I think that's the idea. It's not the order in itself; it's the likely impact and the likelihood that more people will do projects, particularly non-associated gas projects. It makes it more competitive. You'd have more people come in because of tax credits and what will ultimately become tax allowances. That's the idea. It's the effect of the order, not the order in itself. So effect is, if we have more USD coming, then it could reduce the pressure on the naira and can play a role to stabilizing the naira. I think that's what the government seeks to do, and that's critical because gas is priced in USD. Even if you wanted to do it in naira, it's going to be difficult because a lot of the capex, opex is still USD. So if USD pricing, if the naira becomes stronger, it then means that even without gas prices going down, the price will reduce per naira. That's what the challenge also has been. As long as you continue to have the dollar go up, even if gas prices stay fixed, it will change, because when $1 was, say, 400 naira, if gas price is $1, it will be 400 naira in Nigeria. If it then goes up, and if gas price is still $1, but it's now $1 now becomes 1,000, gas price is now going to be 1,000, despite the fact that the dollar price never changed. So if the naira stabilizes, it then means that prices don't just keep skyrocketing or going AY. And you see, you'd have seen that stability in the last few weeks. So that's the idea, to have more forex coming to reduce the pressure on the naira.
Right, and talking about this decade of gas from years 2021 to 2030, honestly, give us an honest review of the progress we have made and what is left to be done.
Okay, quite a bit still needs to be done. We started with 2020 being the year of gas by the last administration, and to be fair, all of these gas talks started with President Obasanjo, and then you had the 2008 domestic gas regulations, supply regulations. With the decade of gas, the idea is to substitute expensive subsidies with gas, which is on the average 30% more or less cheaper than using liquid fuel. So I think that the idea is to ensure that in the next 10 years, remember, the world is looking to transition, but gas is seen as a transition fuel. And because we have in large quantities, government is looking at the next 10 years, making it a gas-centric economic growth, using gas to make as much revenue as we can and to reduce emissions, because gas is more environmentally friendly, right? Reduce gas flaring, commercialize what would have been flares, and ensure that in the next 10 years we're a gas powerhouse. We can compete with countries such as Qatar in their LNG and all of what they do. Part of what government needs to do is to more sensitization, encourage more people from a capex point of view, cheaper credits for people to be able to start some of these projects. I know there have been incentives for people who want to do CNG, want to do LPG projects, because ultimately for the consumer, it's stuff like LPG and LNG. Very people are going to LPG and CNG rather. Very few people are going to use LNG as individuals, right? So the idea is to ensure that across the value chain, from natural gas liquids such as propane, butane, and all of those, octane, you can derive as much value as you can from gas pipeline projects such as the AKK, the OBN, and the integration of the northern and southern gas pipeline system via the eastern gas pipeline system. All of those projects should continue. I understand that AKK should be done by December 2024. So we've done a lot. A lot is going on in terms of those projects. It's just more sensitization, ensuring that there can be cheaper credits, you know, for those projects, and monitoring. That's very important. Research and development, more research and development, get the academia more involved,
Right.
monitoring projects and monitoring implementation of these policies. I think those still need more needs to be done around those.
All right. Okay, so we've run out of time. I wanted to ask a further question when you talked about the engagement with stakeholders, including academia, but we'll just leave it on that, you know, promising notes that you left off. Thank you very much, Dr. Ayodele Oni, for speaking with us on the program today. We appreciate your time joining in all the way from the United States. Have a safe trip back to Nigeria. Thanks.
Thank you very much.